Hey guys, Drifter here. I just got done playing the Concord beta on PC and wanted to offer you my review of the game, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because this is not a sponsored video. I know a lot of streamers and content creators have been sponsored. I was not, so I'm free to offer you my very real opinions. In case you haven't heard, Concord is a new 5v5 hero shooter that plays a lot like Overwatch but has Destiny's movement mechanics, and that makes sense because a lot of it was built by the former Destiny PvP team. It's also got an extremely fun retro space theme, which we'll talk about a bit in the video. The beta came out last week, but it was pre-order only. I'm just now playing it because I waited for the open beta on PC. I think pre-ordering games is against my religion. And the game has received very heavy promotion, both from PlayStation and from a variety of influencers that were paid to stream it both this weekend and last weekend. But again, I'm not on that team. I can give you my real opinion. So without any further ado, let's get started. First and foremost, Concord is definitely a hero shooter because your abilities are just as important as the actual gunplay in the game. The heroes are called free gunners, and in the lore of the game, they operate essentially as space mercenaries, which gives a little bit of explanation to the constantly shifting teams and alliances. Each free gunner has their own amount of health, their own movement style, their own dodge style, their own weapon or sometimes two weapons, and one or two unique abilities and a passive that usually all synergize with one another. Some of them are extremely DPS oriented and have low health or low ability to sustain themselves, such as It's Z, who is a very tracer-like character. Her kit is very fast-paced, she sprints fast, she teleports, she has some disabling moves, very fast-firing SMG. There's this other stealth character that has basically a Raffica burst pistol with a giant magazine, but not all of them are fast. There is a Pharah-like character in the game called Roka that can devastate enemies with AoE rockets from the sky. She's actually one of the stronger characters in the game, in my opinion, very oppressive to play against if you don't know how to counter her, but if she gets caught floating in the air, you can shoot her down very easily, much like Pharah. And there's a couple of different tank-style characters that are bruisers, disruptors, barriers, shields, some ability to soak up bullets and punish anybody that gets close to you. There's One-Off, the giant robot you saw in the trailer, Starchild, who's basically Drax, and he just runs in and slams people. There's a literal 40k Space Marine woman who's the biggest, slowest thing in the game. Fantastic weapon, lots of health, just moves so slow it's like you just choose to play as a turret basically. And there's a few support classes that offer you various ways to control the map with barriers, heal your teammates, ping enemies, throw smoke. These would be like Jmar and J-Billy respectively. So if you've played a hero shooter, you've probably encountered some of these type of character archetypes in the past. Normally this is where I would start talking about the core gameplay loop in the review, but first I wanted to take a detour and talk about character design first. The theme of the game seems very heavily inspired by both early 80s and early 90s sci-fi television, kind of skipping the late 80s there. It's got sort of a retro future punk vibe to it with an emphasis on the retro. There's a variety of characters that sort of look like generic 80s spacemen right out of Battlestar Galactica, or maybe like a Roger Corman movie like Battle Beyond the Stars. And a couple of the non-human characters seem to draw a lot of inspiration from Farscape, like Itzy and the Spore Woman look a lot like Chiana and the Pilot, respectively. Loved Farscape. Didn't appreciate it as much as a kid, but as an adult, fantastic. You should check it out, even if it's very old. The ships that you fly in on, the weapons that you fire, and even the maps themselves are all at least somewhat flavored by this retro style, though I do admit it also feels a little bit Destiny-esque. Overall, I think the game has an extremely cohesive and smart look that pays homage to classic sci-fi shows of decades past. The maps are a little bit crazier than the standard retro theme. Again, they feel very Destiny-like, very sort of post-human sci-fi-like, and they're very fun. They do work within the aesthetic of the game quite well, and they play decently, but we'll talk about that later. All of the characters have a unique personality, unique voice lines, unique interactions, and I think genuinely the strongest element of this entire game is its character design. Whoever the art team is for this game, they deserve a bonus because they've done some very heavy lifting to make me like this game. Sometimes when I'm playing, I feel like I'm literally in an episode of Farscape. But apparently there are some detractors. Some people are very butthurt about this game having pronouns in the character bios and too many characters of color. that makes it woke or trash or unfit to play for some reason. I got a lot of negative comments on my stream. When I search for reviews, I find a lot of nonsense like that. I don't know how to explain this, but the game has a ton of literal robotic and alien characters that do not fit into traditional genders, so it makes more sense to have those labels on the characters. And if the game has too many people of color for you, and that includes both purple and green aliens, I think you should just go watch Birth of a Nation on repeat until you feel good about yourself. Shout out to all 10 people in the chat that actually got that reference. Anyway, I expected to hate this game, but after playing it, I ended up having a somewhat positive impression. I definitely have a lot of gripes, so now we're going to move into the actual review and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. First up, there are only 3 modes available in the beta. All of them have unique names, but they are essentially Kill Confirmed, Domination, and Search and Destroy. The developers seem to have put a lot of focus on the Search and Destroy mode, and there's no gameplay of that in this video review because, well, it's boring and it's bad, and I just did not enjoy it. I enjoyed this game more as an Overwatch-esque game where you can respawn. However, I'm pretty sure that Search and Destroy is the mode that they focused on the most, like their one life mode where you don't respawn is the one that they seem to want to be pushing people toward. All the respawn modes are way more fun because the game is a lot more like Overwatch or COD, and it's way less fun to play in one life mode, so let's talk about why. The base movement in the game is sort of inconsistently slow. I've heard it called slow Overwatch or Sloverwatch. And it's slow for kind of everything that they have going on. And yes, I'm aware that most characters have some form of advanced movement or dash unique to their kit. I'm also aware that there are a number of very fast characters that zip around the map as long as they're doing boots on the ground. But the base movement for medium and heavy characters is very slow, especially like the medium guys. They feel more like heavy guys in other games. And the whole game has this slow, floaty, bouncy, Destiny kind of Halo feel to it that I don't think matches up with the chaos of the gameplay very much. And that sort of low gravity is low enough to make the gameplay feel awkward in certain circumstances. It feels especially bad when you're trying to use your advanced movement to jump and do like a cool play, but you just kind of end up getting stuck floating in the low gravity and then you're a target and people just pick you out of the air. The base movement and sprinting isn't particularly fast for anybody who's not a light character, and when you're jumping, you're going very slow in the air, so it feels like something is off here. My personal recommendation is that the developers should... We can leave the movement speed for now, maybe make mediums a little faster, but they definitely need to actually increase the gravity so that characters fall faster, or all of the non-Pharah characters, because that would be unique to Roka's kit, fall faster, because it feels like even as a normal heavy guy, just jump off and like slowly calm down. Don't like that. If they were to crank the movement speed a little bit and fix the gravity, I think it would be a lot more fun to play. And I think it would be a little easier because I think it's supposed to be a more casual Overwatch. People are calling it Sloverwatch, but it's slow enough to where if you just get stuck in the air all the time, it can be not fun. One of the second major problems is that the health bars are gigantic in this game. I get that hero shooters are supposed to have tanks and characters with more health, but even the basic medium characters have an outrageous amount of health. Some of the tanks have a ludicrous amount of health. I have learned that headshots appear to be dealing double damage, so very important there. Lots of engagements, however, can require me to use several magazines just to kill one medium or low health enemy. Even if they're standing still, sometimes it feels like I can dump a mag into them, and that's just not enough. And this isn't the worst thing for respawn modes because it kind of allows people to bounce around and have long gunfights and stay in the fights, but it's definitely very bad for the one life search and destroy mode. Those type of one life modes typically are predicated on punishing people that miss position, and you would get a pick on your enemy and they would be down one and then you have an advantage and you push. That's sort of the classic gameplay loop there. But in Concord, the free gunners have enough health to where getting an easy pick is kind of a hard thing to do. Even if you have the sniper character, I've headshotted people with the sniper rifle and they legit just didn't die. Sometimes it feels bad just to fight enemies that are bullet sponges that literally won't die. And there aren't that many characters that heal, at least not effectively. We'll talk about that. There are healing pods all over the map like Overwatch. But it's not uncommon for you to shoot people and then for them to sneak off and come back at full health just a few seconds later, even without a healer. Moving on to talk about the gameplay, it's definitely reminiscent of Destiny. It's strongly reminiscent of Destiny PvP, but there's also elements of Overwatch and Halo in there. Maybe if you've played some of the newer Halos, like Halo Infinite, where you have that sort of sprinting and slightly faster Master Chief, it's got some of that kind of vibe to it. As I mentioned before, headshots are extremely rewarding, even to the point where I've realized I'm probably wasting my time if I'm not going for headshots on most characters. Like, most characters have enough health to where body shots don't seem to be worth it, so that seems a little bit odd. One thing I do like a lot is that the majority of the characters replenish their abilities through kills instead of just time. It actually rewards people for using the abilities tactically, for killing enemies with them, and not just waiting on timers. There are some characters and abilities that are on timers. Others are on cooldown based on kills, and I really enjoy that mechanic. That would be an interesting one to bring to games like Overwatch. And what should have been a minor gripe, but ended up being a major one, is that there doesn't appear to be reload canceling in this game, at least not with sprinting, like Call of Duty has sort of popularized and everybody gets into. So what happens is, if you shoot, like, say, 10% of your gun, and you say, So what happens is, if you've got your gun and you shoot like half your mag and you say, okay, I'm going to start reloading, and then a bunch of enemies dogpile you, you'll fall back to Call of Duty mode in the middle of your reload and say, sprint cancel, run around the corner, and you expect to pull your gun back up and have that half magazine left ready to go, but then you'll go back to reloading. So every time you reload, it's a hard commit, and you can't reload while sprinting either. As a longtime COD player, and as a player of a number of games that just copied that mechanic, it doesn't feel very good, and it doesn't feel very good in this game, and I don't think Overwatch did that either. I do think also that despite there being massive health bars on some of the enemies and healing pods over the map, that there aren't enough healer characters in the game, at least not ones that can easily bring heals to the front line. A lot of them are sort of stationary heals, temporary heals, in a zone type healing. There's no like Mercy or Moira that can just kind of pump them to you as consistently. That might be a deliberate choice, but in a game like this, it feels weird because I've noticed that I end up fighting for control of the health packs more than the actual objectives, because you can't take damage. The health pack will take you up to full, right? And it's very difficult to win a gunfight if you're low health, because there is so much health. The trading is so almost predetermined or calculated in a fight. So we're fighting over the health pods, and then I realized I was having a hard time getting them because my teammates would just stand on them. They have like a 15-20 second respawn timer. People would just get weak and just stand on them and just wait. It was so unworth fighting at low health that they would stand there and do nothing for 10 seconds on the health pods. So that's definitely a problem. A random small gripe, it's kind of pretty, but the loading time and loading animations are way too long. Every time you play a map, you're going to get a big flyby of the planet. It's going to look really cool. Looks great. Art's fantastic, beautiful. Then your ship, then your crew comes down. Very Destiny-esque. I don't know how many times I'm going to say Destiny-esque in this review and wonder what the auto subtitles are going to do to it. But it takes a long time, and I feel like sometimes I'm spending more time in the loading screen than the actual match if the match ends up being particularly short. And I think the reason they did that is they use these really cool like cinematic load-ins to mask the long loading times. Let's briefly talk about maps. I think that the map design is on point in terms of aesthetics. It's a little bit not the retro futurism, it's like properly futurism, but it still fits with the theme of the game. They look fantastic, they fit into the game. They're also lit well enough to where it's very clear and easy to identify enemies most of the time. Didn't have too hard of a time with that. Map design seems very reasonable for this type of game. Typically 3, maybe 2, maybe 4 lane maps with a couple of cross paths, a couple of paths designed for specific characters, locked spawn points, health packs in reasonable places. I'll say that unlike Overwatch or Destiny, these maps felt a little bit small. They felt a little bit Call of Duty-like. They wanted to push people into the action very, very quickly, and they do not feel like the sprawling maps of Overwatch. That's neither a good nor a bad thing. That's just a thing that happens in the game. And now, as we move down to my final opinions of the game, I will say that I absolutely loved everything about the aesthetics, and they made the game a lot more fun to play. It has the skeleton or the base gameplay mechanics of an interesting hero shooter, but it's hindered by its low gravity, big health bars, and sort of mismatched focus on one life modes instead of respawn modes. This is a game that after watching people play and stream, mostly sponsored streams to be honest, I expected to hate this game. I expected to come in here and just take a big dookie on it, but I ended up kind of liking it. It's probably not the world's greatest game, but I definitely had fun. I thought it was all right. And I think it appeals to me because I like Overwatch and I like hero shooters and I've got bad, weak, sad hands. And this is a little bit more casual. So there's nothing wrong with a slightly more casual Overwatch. There might actually be an audience for that. This game seems like something I'm not going to have to train or focus too hard on or practice to play to be able to enjoy. I could probably just boot this up with my wife or any other casual gamer and blast a few people and have a good enough time. Sadly, I don't predict that this game is going to have legs. Community sentiment has been fairly negative thus far, both around the gameplay and around the woke stuff I mentioned earlier, which is just pure brain rot. My God. Anyway, community sentiment's a little bit negative, and that's not what I want. Even if I'm criticizing this game on this channel, I always want games to be successful. I hope that I am completely wrong. Concord has legs. 15 years from now, it's the most popular game in the world. It's wildly successful, and people are still sending me this video, but with AI clown makeup on, because I'm saying it's probably not going to last, and we can all play it for years to come. That's what I would like to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's kind of had off to a rough launch. Honestly, the sponsored launch probably didn't help that. My number one gripe is I think that weird floaty feeling, that sort of slow fall, low gravity, is going to be the death of the game. Almost everything else pretty much works. That is really weird. That consistently throws me off. That being said, I had a fun time playing it. I just don't know how much I would go and play it again. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.